The grand hall of Windfort Castle glowed with the flicker of countless candles, while the stained glass windows cast a gentle light in the late afternoon, enveloping the space in a solemn yet majestic ambience. At the altar, Prince Edward, the future king, awaited the arrival of his bride. The union, meticulously arranged over several months, represented a calculated partnership between two realms, a vital accord to secure harmony and strength. Edward, a 28-year-old, was celebrated for his courage in battle and his composed management of royal duties. From a young age, he bore the heavy burden of royalty, fully aware that his existence was destined to serve the realm. Despite being respected for his intellect and ability to lead, those who were nearest to him understood that the prince concealed a deep-seated unease, a feeling of being adrift in his own existence. The betrothal to Princess Eleanor from the far-off land of Eleanor was one of the many weights he carried. Edward had only a fleeting acquaintance with his bride. Whispers surrounding her, however, were far from uplifting. Eleanor was regarded as a young woman of distinctive looks, often characterized as oddly withdrawn, and perpetually shrouded in mystery during public outings. At court, it was murmured that she lacked beauty, and perhaps this was why she never revealed herself completely. The king's advisor leaned in closer, addressing the prince with a hushed tone. "Your Highness," she approaches. Edward merely inclined his head, his expression unreadable. He had never anticipated the arrival of love. His aspirations for marriage were never fueled by passion. Rather, they stemmed solely from a need to ensure the security of his realm. Yet within, a sharp twinge of unease consumed him. Who might this woman be with whom he would share his life forever? The ballroom doors creaked open, drawing the gaze of every guest toward the bride. Clad in a flowing white gown, Princess Eleanor made her entrance, moving with a serene and deliberate grace. Whispers circulated that her visage was shrouded in a fine veil, yet substantial enough to obscure her features. The air in the ballroom thickened, charged with an unspoken anticipation, as if all present were waiting for something extraordinary to unfold. The enigma of her arrival lingered in the atmosphere. The prince observed his bride with keen interest as she drew near. Her presence held a captivating allure that drew him in. Eleanor appeared unfazed by the magnificence of the occasion, nor by the scrutinizing stares that enveloped her. Her posture exuded confidence, and she moved with the assuredness of someone fully aware of her identity. Upon her arrival at the altar, she took her place beside Edward, silent and composed. The shroud remained over her features, and the air crackled with unspoken tension between them. The wedding unfolded, and the atmosphere grew ever more laden with the enigma enveloping the princess. The prince, who had once anticipated little from this union, now experienced an odd sensation, as though he stood before someone entirely beyond his comprehension. The archbishop commenced the ritual's words, and while Edward endeavored to concentrate on the proceedings, his mind wandered to the woman beside him. He pondered what existence might entail alongside a person he scarcely knew, a figure who appeared to conceal her genuine self not just from him, but from everyone around her. As the ceremony reached its climactic moment, the archbishop, adhering to tradition, turned to the bride and spoke. At this moment, Princess Eleanor stands poised to lift the veil, unveiling her authentic self to both her prince and the entire kingdom. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Every gaze was fixed upon her, eager to uncover the mystery that had been shrouded in silence for ages. Edward, in that moment, sensed an unsettling shiver creep down his spine. He wished, like everyone around him, that the tales were genuine, that his future wife was someone whose looks required concealment. Eleanor gently lifted her hands, taking hold of the veil's edges with a serene grace. The atmosphere was utterly still. As she started to raise the fabric, a subtle tension coursed through the audience. At last, the curtain was drawn back. A soft whisper rippled through the crowd, quickly giving way to a stunned hush. Edward remained motionless, his gaze expansive. What he witnessed rendered him utterly without words. Underneath the facade, Eleanor was entirely different from their portrayals. All aspects were pleasing and without any flaws. In fact, her beauty was captivating, yet it possessed a unique quality. Her features captivated with their distinctiveness, embodying a harmonious blend of power and grace. Her eyes were deeply set, as if they contained the mysteries of a lifetime, and her lips curved into a serene, almost cryptic smile. The prince sensed the very fabric of his world unraveling around him. He was uncertain about what he had anticipated, but this was definitely not it. Eleanor met his gaze directly, unwavering and resolute. Her expression was devoid of any shyness or fear. In contrast, she appeared to be evaluating him, as though she understood that this moment would signify the start of something far more significant than just a mere arranged marriage. Edward, a man who had meticulously orchestrated every facet of his existence, now found himself confronting a reality that was utterly beyond his grasp. In that instant, he realized his life was irrevocably altered. Edward's astonishment lingered, the castle hall buzzing with whispers of disbelief. Princess Eleanor was nothing like the whispers had suggested. Her true self was a delightful surprise to all. The prince lingered for a moment, caught in a swirl of thoughts, as Eleanor maintained her unwavering, almost challenging stare. She understood the effect she had created, yet her demeanor stayed calm. Following a moment of stillness, the archbishop resumed the ritual, yet the air was thick with the weight of the unforeseen. Edward, in a state of bewilderment, recited his vows without fully grasping their meaning. Everything around him appeared to drift, and the vision of Eleanor, her face bare, lingered in his thoughts. He had anticipated a delicate and yielding partner, yet what stood before him was entirely unlike his expectations, a person who exuded an indefinable strength. As the ceremony drew to a close, the prince guided his newlywed wife from the hall into the royal chambers, where a reception awaited to celebrate their newfound union. The courtiers exchanged hushed murmurs, their inquisitive gazes tracking Eleanor's every movement. Many were as bewildered as the prince. The image of the enigmatic and allegedly unattractive princess that everyone had envisioned now appeared as an even deeper mystery. Within the reception room, gentle melodies floated through the air as guests started to find their places at the tables. Edward, feeling a sense of unease, remained beside Eleanor, uncertain of how to express himself or what actions to take. Her presence stirred a sense of discomfort within him, igniting a blend of intrigue and mild irritation at his inability to steer the circumstances. "You appear taken aback, Your Highness," Eleanor remarked unexpectedly, her tone gentle yet rich with meaning. Her words didn't come across as teasing, yet there was an underlying playful tone woven into them. Edward gazed at her, warmth flooding his cheeks. How could she express herself so serenely, as if oblivious to the turmoil she had stirred? He started to speak, selecting his words with precision, as the rumors swirled around him. Indeed, they expressed varying viewpoints. "I didn't see that coming." Eleanor offered a faint smile, her expression revealing no offense. "Whispers possess a vitality all their own, dear prince. I always disregarded their opinions." She surveyed the space, feeling the weight of countless gazes upon her. Individuals often tend to trust in the unknown. Edward found her answer even more captivating. Eleanor possessed a beauty that was undeniable, yet it was her manner of speaking that hinted at a profound complexity beneath the surface. He came to understand that he was encountering a woman who defied all the categories he had ever encountered, and that unsettled him. "Why do you always wear the veil?" he inquired, his tone direct. Eleanor maintained her smile, yet her eyes sparkled with a newfound brightness, as though this was the question she had long anticipated. "People perceive me based on their observations. I prefer to preserve some enigmas as they are. The veil has shielded me from that." She halted, her eyes unwavering. "Yet with you, Edward, everything is laid bare. I wish for there to be none." Her genuine nature caught him off guard. He was at a loss for how to respond. The prince, who was used to being in charge, found himself feeling uneasy in the presence of a woman who appeared fearless, unbothered by her status or the gazes directed at her. Edward, who had never anticipated discovering a partner of such vibrant spirit, was starting to understand that this arranged marriage might be far more intricate than he had ever envisioned. The following days unfolded in a flurry of activity. The castle's atmosphere shifted with Eleanor's arrival, and the inhabitants, intrigued, responded with a sense of admiration for the new princess. As some continued to ponder the enigma of the veil, others recognized in Eleanor a symbol of resilience and intellect. Her composed, yet resolute, presence started to capture attention. Yet for Edward, the mystery that Eleanor embodied only deepened. He caught himself watching her quietly, seeking to unravel the mysteries hidden behind that assured look and that inscrutable serenity. In the meetings with his advisors, Eleanor engaged with a keen intellect, presenting ideas that astonished all present. She was no ordinary princess, and this both annoyed and intrigued the prince. One evening, following an especially intense discussion regarding the new trade agreements with Velliner, Edward resolved to confront her. "You're quite different from my expectations, Eleanor," he remarked, once they found themselves alone in the chambers. His voice dripped with exasperation. "What steps can I take to handle this situation? How can I place my trust in someone I have yet to meet?" Eleanor regarded him with a serene demeanor, betraying neither astonishment nor dismay. In fact, she appeared ready for that discussion. "What were you anticipating, Edward?" A quiet princess, ready to comply with every command without hesitation, she inquired, her tone steady yet resolute. "I journeyed from Velliner to fulfill a purpose beyond merely being a decorative spouse. To truly understand me, you must embrace my uniqueness. I am not a pawn in this game for you to manipulate at your convenience." Eleanor's words hit Edward with great force. He had grown accustomed to steering the course of his existence, his domain, his destiny. Yet Eleanor presented a fresh sort of challenge. There was an aspect of him that had consistently shunned dependence on others, yet it found itself irresistibly attracted to this power. Yet, he couldn't shake the apprehension of what it could signify. He found himself unaccustomed to facing such challenges, particularly from his own wife. He confessed, now more composed, that he was uncertain about what to anticipate from you. "However, my desire is to gain a deeper understanding." Eleanor observed him intently, and in that fleeting moment, his expression shifted, uncovering a hint of vulnerability that lay beneath his facade of strength. "First, pay attention to what I have to say. I am not your foe, Edward. I'm here to collaborate with you. However, that is only effective if you perceive more of me than you anticipated." Edward nodded thoughtfully, absorbing the significance of her words. Eleanor was presenting him with a profound connection, something genuine. After many years, the prince sensed that he was confronted with a force beyond his grasp, yet one that held the potential to transform his existence eternally. As darkness enveloped the kingdom, Edward came to understand that his marriage, both surprising and enigmatic, might herald the dawn of a profound change, not solely for him but for all that he understood. In the days that followed, Edward and Eleanor's relationship resembled a delicate choreography. Edward, who had always thrived on complete dominance, was starting to embrace the notion that his wife was not merely a piece to be maneuvered. Eleanor, in turn, kept surprising him, holding her strong stance and keen intellect, yet gradually uncovering a woman of richer complexities than Edward had ever envisioned. Life at Windfort Castle started to adapt to Eleanor's presence. His nuanced gestures of guidance and tactical insight started to garner him admiration among the kingdom's counselors. At first, doubts lingered regarding a princess from a far-off realm, known solely through whispers. Yet with every encounter, she demonstrated that she was far beyond the tales that had circulated. Edward found himself torn between opposing feelings. Even as he diligently fulfilled his responsibilities as prince, his thoughts were perpetually consumed by Eleanor. He pondered the remarkable complexity of a woman often labeled as unconventional and peculiar. Her beauty, now unveiled, was merely a fragment of the enigma. What more could she be concealing? On a tranquil night, as silence enveloped the castle, Edward resolved to deepen his understanding of his wife. He believed that marriage, beyond merely serving as a political alliance, could evolve into a genuine partnership, a concept he had never envisioned for his own life. There was an undeniable allure to Eleanor, a mystery that beckoned him, something he felt compelled to unravel. He discovered her in the library, solitary, perusing one of the kingdom's time-worn tomes. The gentle glow of the candles cast a warm light on her features, and for a brief moment, Edward observed her quietly. She appeared deeply absorbed in her own realm, unlike any other woman he had encountered. "I had no idea you were into books," he remarked, moving closer with a measured pace. Eleanor glanced upward, a faint smile dancing on her lips. "There are countless aspects of my life that remain a mystery to you, Edward," she said, softly shutting the book. "I believe you've come to that understanding already." He nodded and took a seat beside her, feeling uncertain about how to start. "It dawned on me," he confessed candidly. "Initially, I must admit, I believed our union would merely be a formality, a coalition of power, reminiscent of countless others that have preceded it. However, you are quite unlike what I had anticipated." Eleanor studied him intently, weighing her words with precision. "From the moment I realized I would marry you, Edward, I understood that I needed to be more than merely a charming figure. I arrived from Velliner with the aim of fortifying that alliance, indeed, but also with the desire to be a genuine partner to you." She halted, her eyes unwavering. "However, that will only be effective if you genuinely seek to understand me." Edward observed her intently, feeling that this was the pivotal moment. He yearned to know her, to grasp the essence of this woman who both intrigued and captivated him simultaneously. "What is it that you wish for me to understand?" he inquired with genuine intent. Eleanor offered a gentle smile, as though she had anticipated this inquiry all along. "I want to share that my upbringing was distant from the norms of a conventional court. In Velliner, I was nurtured to lead, to embody strength. Yet, I have consistently felt the need to conceal certain aspects of who I am. Individuals tend to gravitate towards myths and rumors, as you've observed. The veil I donned served a purpose beyond concealing my visage. It was to conceal my true self." Her eyes glimmered with a blend of sorrow and resistance. "Yet with you, I feel no need to conceal anything." Edward experienced a constriction in his chest upon hearing her words. He realized that for an extended period, he had failed to grasp the profound intricacies of his own existence. He had been raised amidst his father's aspirations, ever ready to embody the leader the kingdom required. Yet beside Eleanor, he started to understand that he had never permitted himself to be open, to be anything other than the crown prince. "I see," he replied, with a gentler tone than he had anticipated. "It seems I've been concealing my true self for quite a while now." Eleanor observed him, sensing the genuine emotion behind his words. It was the inaugural moment she witnessed the prince genuinely lower his defenses. For the first time, she glimpsed an opportunity to create something authentic between them. "How about we begin anew?" she proposed, her voice steady yet tinged with a hint of optimism. "Unfiltered, unbound by the past. Only you and I." Edward nodded, absorbing the gravity of her words. The prospect of beginning anew, of genuinely attempting to create something alongside Eleanor, stirred within him a blend of apprehension and exhilaration. Yet, he understood that the journey ahead would be challenging. He found himself grappling with the depths of her character, sensing that Eleanor held back truths she wasn't prepared to share. In the weeks that followed, Edward and Eleanor found themselves sharing more moments together. He extended an invitation to her for political gatherings, and over meals their discussions grew more intimate. He started to recognize her sharp intellect, her deep understanding of the realm, and her skill in managing the most challenging advisors. Eleanor, in contrast, appeared to grow more at ease in Edward's presence, uncovering aspects of herself that she had once concealed. Yet, there were moments of turbulence. Whispers persisted throughout the court. Curiosity lingered around Eleanor's essence, as doubts clouded her abrupt ascent to authority. Despite his growing intrigue with his wife, Edward sensed there was an unspoken truth lurking beneath the surface, something she had yet to reveal. He felt that beneath her calm exterior was a narrative that Eleanor was still hesitant to reveal. On a blustery autumn night, as the wind howled through the castle walls, Edward made the fateful decision to confront her at last. "Eleanor," he remarked as they strolled through the gardens bathed in moonlight, "I feel there's something you haven't shared with me yet. I value your boundaries, but if we are genuinely going to collaborate, I must understand what you're concealing." She halted her steps, gradually pivoting to confront him. Her eyes held an enigmatic glimmer, a blend of anguish and resolve. "You're right, Edward," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "I have a secret I haven't shared with you yet. A bit about me and Eleanor." Edward lingered, acutely aware that this moment held great significance. He was on the brink of uncovering the true reason Eleanor had concealed herself behind a veil for so long, and the revelation that could alter everything between them. The crisp autumn breeze danced through Windfort's gardens, stirring the brittle leaves that surrounded Edward and Eleanor. The prince sensed an electric tension in the atmosphere, a force that promised to alter the course of their lives forever. The stillness that enveloped the room after Eleanor's confession felt endless, and he sensed that he was on the brink of uncovering the reality concealed beneath the surface, the reality she had managed to keep hidden all along. Eleanor inhaled deeply, preparing herself for the challenge ahead. Her eyes, once brimming with assurance and enigma, now mirrored a quiet anguish, as though the burden of that secret had shadowed her existence all along. "I was raised in Velinor, among royalty that never fully embraced me," she began, her voice steady yet resolute. "Since childhood, my looks and demeanor have been the basis for others' evaluations of me. They remarked that I didn't embody the type of princess they had envisioned, that I lacked the gentleness that other princesses seemed to have. For numerous individuals, that was seen as a shortcoming." Edward absorbed every word, a weight settling in his chest. It felt surreal to think that a person embodying such strength and dignity could endure this kind of treatment. The veil transformed into a shield, Eleanor went on, her eyes locked onto the shadowy expanse of the garden ahead. "I concealed myself behind it to avoid the piercing gazes of judgment. Allowing others to form their own opinions was the simpler path. As I transitioned into adulthood, what ought to have been a straightforward decision regarding my appearance evolved into a profound symbol. And when the union with you was set, the veil stood as an obstacle, a shield against the impending storm." Edward shivered at the thought of her tale. He understood the severe demands that came with being royal, yet he had never fathomed the depth of pain it could inflict on a person. At this moment, he felt an intense desire to grasp the essence of Eleanor completely. "But that's not all, Edward," she said, cutting through his thoughts, her voice now heavy with feeling. "I had a more significant motive for retreating into obscurity, and I require you to be ready to hear." Edward nodded, cradling her hand with tenderness. "I have arrived, Eleanor. I desire to learn it all. No matter what comes our way, we will confront it side by side." Eleanor inhaled deeply, her gaze sparkling with a blend of trepidation and resolve. The fierce wind appeared to amplify the tension that hung in the atmosphere. "Upon my arrival into the world, a foretelling emerged in Velinor, a prophecy declaring that the next princess to ascend the throne would bear a shadowy destiny. A spell that holds the power to unleash either turmoil or redemption upon the realm. My parents, haunted by this curse, were convinced that my arrival was intertwined with an age-old prophecy." Edward's eyes grew wide with astonishment. A hex? The notion appeared ridiculous, yet Eleanor's eyes conveyed an undeniable truth about its significance to her. "My parents loved me, yet there was always a shadow of fear in their eyes," she continued, the anguish clear in her tone. "It was thought that by uniting with a prince from a distant realm, the ominous destiny of Velinor could be changed. And that was the reason our union was orchestrated, in pursuit of Velinor's salvation." Edward sensed the gravity of the revelation descend upon him. What he had once perceived as a mere political alliance in their marriage turned out to hold far deeper meaning. For Velinor, it was a struggle for existence, a quest to shield the realm from an enigmatic and dreaded threat. Yet above all, it was a burden Eleanor had carried in solitude, concealing it from all around her. They were never quite certain of the prophecy's meaning, she remarked, a hint of sorrow reflecting in her gaze. But fear consumed them, and in the end, I became more of a tool than a daughter. When they sent me here to marry you, they hoped the veil would protect the truth, that no one would find out who I really was. Edward felt a mix of emotions wash over him. On the one hand, the story seemed surreal, as if it belonged to an ancient legend rather than the strong, realistic woman who stood before him. But on the other hand, he could not deny Eleanor's pain and the burden she carried. The curse, real or not, had shaped her life. Eleanor, Edward searched for words, but he didn't know what to say. I don't know if I believe in curses, but I believe in you. And I believe that Velenor's fear has kept her prisoner for too long. Eleanor looked at him in surprise. She was used to being treated with suspicion and fear, but Edward, even after hearing about the curse, seemed more concerned about her than what it meant for the kingdom. I will not let this dark fate control our lives, he said, his voice firm. Whatever your parents believed in will not define who we are. You no longer need to hide behind veils, Eleanor. Not with me. His words touched something deep inside Eleanor. For the first time, she felt she could be free, not just from the veil, but from the crushing expectation that had always accompanied her. And in that moment, she knew that the man before her was more than a prince destined to rule. He was someone with whom she could finally share her true self. Thank you, Edward, she said softly. But know that by accepting this, you are also taking the risk that what my parents feared might happen. Edward shook his head, determined. Whatever happens, we will face it together. You and I will not let prophecies or curses destroy what we are beginning to build. The wind seemed to have calmed down, as if the castle itself was hearing those words. And for the first time since their marriage, Edward and Eleanor felt that, despite all their uncertainty and fears, they could truly be partners. In the days that followed, Edward and Eleanor's relationship changed. Now that the secrets were out in the open, the distance between them began to close. Eleanor, liberated from the weight of the veil and the curse, started to reveal herself more fully, letting Edward glimpse her authentic essence. Resilient, delicate, and brave. Yet, Windfort Castle appeared to be on the brink of a significant transformation. Whispers of a foretold fate started to spread among the aristocracy, and a sense of skepticism began to take root. A palpable dread of the unfamiliar, particularly regarding age-old curses and foretold destinies, swiftly permeated the court. Edward understood that if the realm uncovered the reality of the union, the bond he and Eleanor had been nurturing might shatter. Even more troubling, he worried that unforeseen challenges could arise to challenge the bond and collaboration they were nurturing. Deep within, despite Edward's skepticism towards curses, he was aware that some things remained beyond his grasp of prediction. And destiny, ever capricious, was on the verge of risking it all. The atmosphere in Windfort grew more charged with each passing day as whispers of Eleanor's curse circulated among the court. The castle, once a beacon of stability, now stood enveloped in an air of suspicion and dread. Rumors circulated that the princess might herald a grim destiny for the kingdom, and unease began to spread among the people as they regarded her with suspicion. Eleanor, even after confiding her secret to Edward, sensed the heavy burden of the court's skepticism. Even among her own attendants, she perceived sidelong looks, discussions halting abruptly upon her arrival. Even as she felt a deeper connection with Edward than ever, the looming presence of the prophecy cast a dark cloud over their budding relationship, jeopardizing the foundation they were starting to create together. Edward, resolute in his intentions, was committed to safeguarding his wife. The enigma of Eleanor, wrapped in shadows, failed to instill fear in him. He was convinced that the destiny of his realm rested not on old tales, but on the choices he made himself. Yet, the prince was acutely aware that swift action was essential for preserving harmony in Windfort. One afternoon, amidst the discussions of a council meeting, Edward chose to address the matter directly. The aristocrats convened at an elongated table, engaged in deliberations about the latest troop maneuvers in adjacent realms. Yet, the ambience among the counselors was charged, with Eleanor's name lingering like a ghostly figure, perceptible to all. Prince Edward, Lord Gavin began, his deep voice cutting through the silence. There are issues that require our attention beyond just military concerns. Edward arched an eyebrow, bracing himself for what was about to unfold. "Proceed, Lord Gavin." The advisor scanned the room, searching for affirmation in the expressions of the other nobles before he began to speak. He spoke with caution, expressing the increasing worries surrounding Princess Eleanor. The court is apprehensive regarding whispers of a long-standing Velener curse. While we understand they are merely tales, there is a growing concern among the people. The remaining counselors exchanged knowing glances, their silence heavy with anticipation, as though they had been poised for this very moment. Edward experienced a wave of fury, yet he managed to rein it in. He understood that losing his temper could only exacerbate the situation. Instead, he articulated his thoughts with conviction. "I acknowledge your worries, but allow me to clarify. Princess Eleanor is my wife and will be your future queen. Whispers of curses and prophecies hold no significance in this assembly. These are unfounded tales." Lord Gavin paused briefly, contemplating his response. "With the utmost respect, Your Highness, these tales have stirred discontent among the populace. This cannot be overlooked. A realm thrives on the faith of its people. Should the court and the populace start to harbor fears regarding the queen herself?" "These are not mere tales," Edward interjected, with a greater intensity than he had meant to convey. "The true danger lies in the rifts that these rumors can create. Eleanor has demonstrated her steadfastness and sharp intellect. She has made substantial contributions to the matters of the kingdom. If there are any concerns regarding her capabilities, now is the time to voice them." The ensuing silence weighed heavily in the air. The atmosphere crackled with unspoken challenges, though none would confront Edward face to face. The advisors understood the prince's unwavering resolve to safeguard his wife, yet the dread of uncertainty persistently undermined their assurance. As the meeting concluded, Edward exited the room, burdened by an intensified sense of responsibility. The whispers and the foretellings swelled like an unseen tempest, and he understood that mere words would not suffice to soothe the court. As the wind howled outside the castle that night, Edward and Eleanor engaged in conversation within their chambers. She recognized the tension that had filled the meeting with the counselors, and she noticed the weariness starting to creep into Edward's eyes. The burden of upholding harmony in the realm and safeguarding their bond was beginning to weigh heavily. "The council is divided," he stated plainly as he settled next to her by the fire. "They continue to hold onto these absurd rumors. They are filled with trepidation, and that trepidation renders them vulnerable." Eleanor paused, her gaze fixed on the flickering flames of the fire. "You understand that these rumors won't just disappear, Edward," she remarked, her tone steady yet earnest. "The thrill of uncertainty is a source of inspiration for many. I have carried it with me throughout my entire existence. And now, I sense the burden of that curse extending throughout the realm." Edward gazed at her, a tightness gripping his heart. He loathed witnessing the anguish in Eleanor's gaze, fully aware that no matter how hard he battled the whispers, she would remain the one most impacted. "I don't believe in this curse, Eleanor," he said, gently taking her hand. "Yet, should something approach, should there be any validity to this foretelling, we shall confront it united. You're in good company with this." Eleanor smiled gently, yet her eyes hinted at a deeper understanding, revealing that she held secrets just beneath the surface. While she had faith in Edward, an unsettling feeling told her that the tempest surrounding her was merely at its inception.
Eleanor's prophecy transcended mere storytelling.
A shadow had trailed her since the moment she entered the world, and now it appeared to be materializing, casting its influence over those in her vicinity. Just as he was about to reply, an unexpected noise reverberated through the castle hallways. Rapid footsteps and tense voices drew near. Before long, a guard emerged at the door to the chambers, breathless. "Your Highness," the guard exclaimed, a look of clear alarm on his face. "A curious event has unfolded in the neighboring village. It is whispered that a shadowy presence has arisen in the territories surrounding the castle." Eleanor's heart came to a standstill. Edward sprang to his feet without hesitation, his instincts as a leader kicking in. "What happened?" he inquired, gripping his sword tightly as he readied himself to pursue the guard. A shadowy fog has been reported creeping over the village. The crops are withering, and fear grips the hearts of the villagers. It is said that this marks the start of Eleanor's curse. The guard's words lingered, striking with the force of a gut-wrenching blow. Edward shared a fleeting look with Eleanor, whose complexion was wan yet resolute. "I'll go with you," she declared, rising to her feet. "No," Edward responded swiftly. "If it poses a threat, it's best for you to remain here." Yet Eleanor shook her head, her expression unwavering. "I can no longer conceal myself, Edward. If this is connected to the prophecy, I must confront it directly. This is my existence. It is my fate." With a hint of hesitation, Edward nodded. He understood that he couldn't prevent Eleanor from being involved, particularly now that all the threads appeared to intertwine with the enigma enveloping his existence. As they readied themselves to depart the castle, the ominous mist that shrouded the village appeared to be merely the onset of something far more sinister. The destiny of Windfort and the paths of Edward and Eleanor teetered on the edge of an unforeseen magnitude, far beyond their wildest imaginations. The curse of Velinor, whether it stemmed from reality or merely fear manifesting as truth, was on the verge of unveiling itself. The night enveloped everything in an inky blackness, while the wind sweeping through Windfort carried a chilling sense of foreboding. Edward and Eleanor departed from the castle, accompanied by a handful of guards, making their way to the village shrouded in ominous fog. The tales the guards shared felt surreal, yet deep down, they both sensed that this was the initial concrete embodiment of Velinor's age-old prophecy. As they rode, the sound of their horses' hooves on the ground resonated with a somber finality. Eleanor sat next to Edward, lost in silence, her mind a tempest of anxieties and obligations. Her arrival in the kingdom had stirred unease, and now, as the black mist devastated the crops and instilled fear among the populace, the prophecy started to feel hauntingly tangible. Could this be the doom her parents had dreaded? Was she really destined to unleash chaos? Edward fixed his gaze forward, his jaw tight with tension. He had always dismissed the idea of curses, yet the terror reflected in Eleanor's gaze unsettled him deeply. He yearned to shield her from all harm, yet how could he guard her against an unseen danger, something that revealed itself in the murmurs of the breeze and the shadows of the evening? Upon arriving at the village, the sight was far more desolate than they had envisioned. A dense, shadowy mist shrouded the homes and farmland, so heavy that visibility extended only a few paces ahead. The once vibrant crops lay lifeless and decaying, as though an unseen force had siphoned the vitality from the plants. The villagers congregated in the center, their faces ashen and brimming with fear. What transpired in this place? Edward dismounted from his horse and walked toward one of the villagers. A frail villager, quaking with dread, faltered in his speech. The fog materialized unexpectedly, my liege. Last night, it swept over us, and before long, everything started to fade. The crops perished and some animals became unwell. Uncertainty looms over us, yet whispers of a curse echo in every corner. The haunting tale of Eleanor. The name of the curse was murmured with such dread that Edward felt a shiver creep down his spine. He glanced at Eleanor, who stood beside him, observing the scene with keen interest. The burden of remorse started to swell within her, yet she remained steadfast. "I want to discover the origin of the fog," Eleanor declared with resolve. "I seek clarity on the current situation." Edward gazed at her, recognizing the bravery she exhibited, despite the fear that surrounded her. He gestured to the guards, signaling that they ought to move with care. As they made their way toward the fields, the fog enveloped them, growing denser with each step. Upon arriving at the source of the mist, Eleanor sensed an unusual presence in the air, as though an unseen force lingered nearby. The chill pierced through the air, and the shadows felt thicker, as though the very earth were under a dark spell. "This feels off," one of the guards whispered, glancing around with a wary eye. Eleanor sank to her knees, her fingertips brushing against the earth. A mysterious sensation emanated from the earth, an inexplicable vibration that felt intrinsically linked to her being. Her heart pounded, and an overwhelming burden pressed down on her spirit. What if the curse truly existed? What if, indeed, her very existence was bringing ruin to the realm? "Eleanor," Edward called, his voice laced with worry. He observed her intently, sensing that there was an unmistakable change in her demeanor. She stood there, her eyes locked on the swirling mist, and for a fleeting moment, she appeared to be adrift in her own reflections. But then her expression steeled, and she regarded Edward with a fierce resolve. If this is a sign of the curse at play, then there must be an entity or force orchestrating it. She inhaled deeply. This is more than mere folklore. A genuine occurrence is unfolding, and we must uncover its nature before it permeates the entire kingdom. Edward acknowledged her insight with a nod, fully aware of its truth. The curse, be it born of an otherworldly power or something more concrete, had to be halted. Should there be an individual orchestrating this, it was imperative to uncover their identity before further devastation ensued. Upon their return to the castle that night, the air was thick with tension. The fog lingered over the village, and while the signs of death and destruction had faded, a profound fear had taken root in the hearts of both the villagers and the nobles of the kingdom. Within the grand expanse of the castle's main hall, Edward summoned his advisors for an urgent meeting. He realized that facing this situation by himself was beyond his capacity, and at this moment, the support of others was crucial. The advisors' expressions were etched with worry as they convened around the expansive wooden table. "We require answers," Edward started, gazing at each of the men gathered. "The events that transpired in the village demand our attention. Something unusual is afoot, and we must uncover whether it ties to the ancient prophecy of Eleanor, or if there is an unseen hand steering forces beyond our grasp." Lord Gavin, ever the skeptic when it came to Eleanor, chose his words with care. "My esteemed sovereign, if I might be so bold," he commenced, selecting his phrases with great precision. "It is impossible to overlook the connection between Princess Eleanor's arrival and the beginning of this darkness. I'm not implying that she is to blame, but maybe there's something in Eleanor that has led to this situation in our kingdom." Eleanor, standing next to Edward, said nothing, yet her eyes glowed with fierce resolve. She understood that suspicion would be cast upon her, yet she refused to let fear shape her identity. "I comprehend your worries, Lord Gavin," she responded with a serene demeanor, undisturbed by the implications. "Rest assured, I bear no responsibility for this darkness. Should any essence of Eleanor be revealing itself in this realm, it is imperative that we grasp its nature. Unity is essential for us to achieve that goal." Edward inclined his head, in accord with Eleanor's sentiments. "Now is the time for us to come together like never before. There is an entity or force attempting to wield Eleanor's curse against us. We must not allow fear to create divisions among us." He fixed his gaze squarely on Lord Gavin. "The pressing issue at hand is not its origin, but rather the methods we will employ to halt its advance." The board, despite the palpable tension, reached a consensus to proceed with the investigation. Yet, the burden of the prophecy loomed large for all, and Edward was acutely aware that time was slipping away. The realm teetered on the edge of profound turmoil, with the dark fog merely heralding the onset of darker times. That evening, as Eleanor got ready for sleep, a sense of discomfort settled inside her. The burden of the curse, once silent for ages, had now stirred to life, and, more than ever, she sensed that the destiny of the kingdom was intricately linked to her own history. As she lay beside Edward, who had succumbed to slumber, her gaze drifted to the ceiling, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. What was this shadow that trailed behind her every move? How could she possibly confront something that appeared so vastly larger than anything she had ever encountered? In the stillness of the night, a whisper reached her ears. A subtle whisper, reminiscent of the breeze, yet it conveyed a distinct meaning. "Eleanor." She sprang upright, her heart pounding fiercely. The tone was frigid, remote, yet undeniably clear. And then, once more, the whisper, "Your fate awaits you." Eleanor experienced a shiver that coursed down her spine. The murmur felt like it originated deep within her thoughts, as though the curse was at last revealing itself inside her. No matter what was unfolding, she understood that she had to confront it head-on. This time, destiny was approaching her head-on. Eleanor lingered in the shadows, the murmurs continuing to resonate within her thoughts. The cold she experienced was not merely that of the night enveloping the castle, but something more profound, more sinister. The dread she had carried throughout her existence was now drawing near, and upon hearing her name whispered in those otherworldly tones, she realized the prophecy was unfolding before her eyes. "Eleanor, your fate awaits you." The words appeared to emanate from all directions, yet simultaneously resonated deep within his very essence. The whisper lingered, relentless, as though it were drawing her out, away. She gazed at Edward, who lay beside her in a deep slumber, his face serene yet weary from the weight of recent struggles and obligations that had been accumulating in the past few days. She realized she needed to uncover the truth of the situation. She could no longer remain a passive observer, waiting for circumstances to resolve themselves. Should the curse genuinely be linked to her, Eleanor needed to find a way to confront it. With a soft exhale, she rose from the bed, treading lightly to avoid disturbing Edward. He swiftly donned a thick cloak and quietly slipped out of the room. As she strolled through the shadowy hallways of the castle, the murmurs appeared to intensify, as though the enigmatic voice was leading her onward. Eleanor trailed the murmurs until she arrived at the castle's venerable library, a realm seldom frequented save for those learned individuals or advisors seeking the wisdom of age-old texts. The atmosphere was thick with darkness, illuminated solely by a handful of flickering candles that were on the verge of extinguishing. As she stepped inside, an unmistakable heaviness enveloped her, creating the sensation that time had come to a standstill in that very moment. She understood her presence held significance. Within those walls lay a secret, a crucial piece to unraveling the mystery of the curse. As she strolled through the dusty aisles, Eleanor made her way to a section dedicated to the ancient tomes. Volumes of history, mythology, and legend, inscribed in ancient tongues that only a select few could decipher. And then, out of nowhere, one book in particular drew her attention. The surface appeared weathered, its borders tattered by time, yet the leather binding bore markings she knew well, emblems of Velinor. With quivering fingers, Eleanor retrieved the book from the shelf and gently opened it. The pages bore a faded hue, and the script was in a time-worn tongue, yet it was one she recognized intimately. It was the tongue of her forebears. As she turned the pages of the book, she discovered what she sought, a chapter devoted to the curse of Velinor. As the moon ascends above the faraway realm, a shadow shall accompany the heir of Velinor. The destiny lies within the grasp of the princess, who will present the pivotal choice between ruin and redemption. Those who tremble in her presence will forfeit all, yet those who have faith will uncover untapped power. Eleanor experienced a shiver that coursed down her spine. The message was unmistakable, and at last, she grasped the reason behind her parents' and her community's long-standing dread of her very being. The ominous words foretold more than mere turmoil. They presented a pivotal decision she must confront. She alone was meant to determine the destiny of Velinor and, now, Windfort. But what did it mean to choose? Will it lead to ruin or redemption? And how could he discern which path was the correct one? Just as she was about to immerse herself further into the texts, the sound of footsteps reverberated through the library. She spun around swiftly, her heart pounding in her chest. Edward stood in the doorway, his gaze filled with concern and bewilderment as he beheld her, solitary in the stillness of the night, clutching the ancient book in her hands. "Eleanor, what's happening?" he inquired, drawing closer to her. "I awoke to find your absence beside me. I was under the impression that something had occurred." Eleanor paused briefly, but ultimately resolved that she could no longer conceal the truth. "Not from that source. Edward, I believe I've discovered the solution to the situation at hand." His voice carried a serene quality, yet the trepidation in his eyes was unmistakable. The dreaded curse of Velinor, a source of terror for all, is indeed a reality. However, it isn't as they perceive it. It's not a certain fate. It's a decision. Edward furrowed his brow, grappling with confusion. Select? Could you clarify what you mean? With a deep sigh, she held the book close, as though it were her lifeline to the world around her. The prophecy foretells that I carry a decision for the realm. I am at the heart of it all, Edward. I have the power to create chaos or offer redemption. However, I'm uncertain about how to decide on that. I'm uncertain about what is correct. Edward paused, allowing her words to resonate within him. It was hard to come to terms with the notion that his wife, the one with whom he had started to forge a genuine partnership, bore the weight of two kingdoms on her shoulders. Yet, he was acutely aware that he could not refute the honesty reflected in Eleanor's gaze. You don't have to face this decision by yourself, he finally remarked. No matter what comes our way, we will confront it side by side. I have faith in you, Eleanor. When faced with a decision, you will choose wisely. She gazed at him, her eyes overflowing with feeling. After what seemed like an eternity, Eleanor sensed a shift. She was no longer isolated in her struggle. Edward had faith in her, and that surpassed anything she had ever anticipated. Thank you, Edward, she whispered, her voice trembling. I'm simply apprehensive about making the wrong choice. What if I unleash chaos instead of deliverance? Edward stepped closer, grasping her hands gently, his gaze steady and unwavering, instilling a sense of strength within her. I am convinced that your purpose is to uplift, not to harm. Your contributions to this realm surpass any affliction that could befall it. Together, we shall uncover the significance of that journey. Eleanor beamed, a fresh sense of optimism blossoming inside her. Yet, beneath the surface, she understood that there remained a wealth of mysteries to explore. The mist, the murmurs, and the encroaching shadows that were starting to shroud the realm were omens that the hourglass was nearly empty. The moment foretold by the prophecy was drawing near, and she had to prepare herself. The following morning, Windfort stirred to find the sky shrouded in ominous dark clouds. The mist that once lingered solely in the village began to creep toward the castle walls, moving slowly yet with an unwavering determination. The air was thick with unease, and a growing apprehension settled over the crowd as they braced for what might lie ahead. As Edward and Eleanor readied themselves to confront the challenges ahead, an atmosphere of urgency enveloped the castle. Fortifications were strengthened, and envoys were dispatched to the allied realm in search of assistance. Yet beneath the surface, all understood that the true conflict would transcend mere weapons and armor. It would unfold deep within Eleanor's very essence. Ultimately, the decision she reached would determine the destiny of all. The shadowy mist slithered up the walls of Windfort Castle, creeping and quiet, like a foreboding presence poised to engulf all it encountered. The atmosphere was charged with anticipation, as the whole realm appeared to pause, bracing for the resolution of a prophecy that loomed ominously overhead. Within the castle's walls, a palpable tension lingered, as the burden of destiny rested upon one solitary figure, Eleanor. The morning had transformed into a gloomy day, the sky shrouded in clouds that hinted at a foreboding presence, suggesting something far more sinister than rain. Edward and Eleanor braced themselves for the unavoidable clash, not against visible foes, but against the unseen powers that were seizing control of the realm. The resonance of the age-old prophecy filled the castle, and Eleanor sensed in every part of her that the pivotal moment was drawing near. I want you to stay here, Edward said, gripping Eleanor's hands firmly, his gaze filled with worry. Allow me and the guards to take care of this. Please prioritize your safety. Eleanor smiled gently, caressing Edward's face with affection. She understood his desire to shield her, yet she was acutely aware that the struggle before her was one she had to face alone. The decision before her was one that could neither be evaded nor delayed. The long-foretold prophecy of Eleanor, which had shadowed her every step, now lay before her at last. I can no longer conceal myself, Edward, she stated with a calm determination. This transcends our individual selves, surpassing any conflict we might engage in with blades. I must confront what lies ahead. I must choose the path that is destined for me. Edward gazed at her, emotions swirling within him, a blend of pride and deep sorrow. He understood that he could not hold her back. Eleanor was far more than just a protected royal. She stood beside him as an equal, a partner, and beyond that, a woman fated to bear the weight of a prophecy she had not selected. Yet now it was her duty to confront. "I will be by your side," he promised, his eyes brimming with steadfast loyalty. "No matter what comes our way, we will confront it side by side." Eleanor nodded, a sense of inner strength blossoming within her. With Edward beside her, she felt a sense of strength to confront whatever lay ahead. Yet beneath it all, she understood that the ultimate choice rested solely with her. As the day unfolded, the fog that had shrouded the village drew nearer to the castle gates. The terrified inhabitants sought shelter within the confines of their walls, while the soldiers, though equipped with weapons, understood that they faced an intangible foe. The nearby trees appeared to fade as the darkness of the mist enveloped them, sapping the vitality from all it encountered. As the fog enveloped the castle gates, the atmosphere grew dense and suffocating. Felt like time had come to a standstill. Eleanor and Edward stood in the grand hall, encircled by advisors and nobles, their eyes fixed on the pair, anticipating direction, yearning for a miracle. In an instant, the grand front gate swung wide, and a chilling breeze swept into the castle. As the breeze blew, secrets floated through the air. The familiar voices Eleanor had listened to in previous nights now resonated with greater volume and clarity. "Eleanor, fate has arrived, and a decision is at hand." Her heart raced, yet within her, a sense of tranquility persisted. She felt it deep within her. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The destiny that the prophecy had predicted lay ahead of her. The mist transcended mere fear. It was a vibrant force, an entity that insisted upon the choice foretold by Eleanor. Suddenly, as if conjured from the very essence of the fog, a silhouette materialized. A figure cloaked in shadows, with eyes that glimmered like stars from another realm. He strolled deliberately to the heart of the hall, and his mere presence commanded complete silence. All eyes were fixed in wonder, yet not a single soul had the courage to stir. "Princess Eleanor of Eleanor," the figure proclaimed, their voice resonating as if it were coming from all directions simultaneously. "The moment is here to embrace your fate. The shadow of your forebears' dread now looms over you. The realm teeters on the edge of collapse, and the choice lies solely in your hands. Will it be devastation or redemption?" Eleanor moved ahead, sensing the burden of duty pressing down on her, yet experiencing an unusual sense of clarity. She gazed at the cloaked figure, aware that this was the entity embodying Eleanor's curse, a timeless force that required a decision. "And what is the choice?" she inquired, her tone resolute, even as the fear attempted to take root in her chest. The entity extended its hand, and the fog enveloping it stirred as though it possessed a will of its own. "You can opt for ruin," he stated, his tone husky and resonant. "Abandon all, relinquish the throne, and your essence will quench the might of the curse. The prophecy shall come to pass, and Eleanor will finally shed the weight it has borne for ages." Eleanor experienced a deep, unsettling coldness within her very being. Give up the realm? She gazed at Edward, at her advisors, at all those who placed their faith in her. What could have led her to make such a choice? What about the alternative option? She inquired, striving to maintain her composure. The cloaked figure grinned, a sinister grin that offered no solace. "Redemption is achieved through the willingness to give up something dear. You must confront the darkness that resides within and accept the strength of the curse. Should you choose this path, you might rescue Eleanor and Windfort, yet you will emerge forever changed. The weight will be everlasting, and the cost of redemption will be your very being." Eleanor experienced a brief moment where her breath seemed to falter in her throat. She would rescue the realm, yet sacrifice her very identity in the process of transforming into something else, something molded by the affliction. She glanced back at Edward, her gaze heavy with unfallen tears. He observed her unease and moved closer, drawing near to her. "Whatever path you take, I will stand beside you," he said, his voice gentle and overflowing with affection. But keep in mind, Eleanor, you possess great strength. You have consistently been that way. Do not allow fear to control your decisions. She shut her eyes briefly, summoning the strength from deep within. The decision has become evident at this point. It wasn't about survival. It was about the essence of her identity, the core of who she had always been. Eleanor had always understood that the curse was more than merely a shadowy prediction. It was an examination. She opened her eyes, and her voice resonated powerfully throughout the hall. I embrace redemption, yet I refuse to sacrifice my true self. The cloaked figure appeared to falter, as though his own words had caught him off guard. The curse shall not bring about my downfall. I will confront it and rise above, all while staying true to myself. Neither Windfort nor Velener shall meet their end. I am willing to pay if necessary, but it will be on my own conditions. The fog enveloping the hall started to swirl with intensity, as though an unseen power was contesting Eleanor's decision. Yet she remained resolute, her hand clasping Edward's, sensing the power of his affection beside her. In an instant, the cloaked silhouette vanished, engulfed by the very shadows around it. The mist gradually lifted, and the oppressive atmosphere surrounding the castle started to ease. A collective sigh of relief filled the air, breaking the silence that had lingered. Eleanor sank to her knees, utterly spent, yet a profound sense of relief surged within her. She had decided her path, and she emerged victorious. Edward knelt beside her, cradling her gently in his embrace. "You accomplished it, Eleanor," he murmured, his eyes gleaming with pride. She smiled, tears cascading down her cheeks at last. This was a collaborative effort. The realms of Windfort and Velener were liberated, and the ancient curse that had plagued their forebears for ages was at last dispelled. The shadows had lifted, and Eleanor's resolve, paired with Edward's devotion, had conquered the age-old prophecy. In that instant, Eleanor realized that genuine strength lay not in evading fate, but in confronting it with bravery.